Hello, everyone. Have you ever tried to make some changes in your life and you find like your brain is fighting against you? Something that maybe logically you know you're supposed to be doing, but for whatever reason, you just can't make the change. Or you see some improvement, you stick to something for a week, and then the first roadblock that comes up, you are back to your old ways. So if any of that relates to you, if you've ever been in those situations, my special guest today is going to help shed some light on what is going on in those situations. He is an expert of rewiring the mind. So if we're going to look today to explore rewiring the mind to release weight, how we can have freedom from our subconscious mind. So my special guest is going to be Brian, who will be joining me in just a moment. And he's an energy practitioner, and he's passionate about getting to the root cause of health problems. And with his role, he'll explain how he approaches that versus, he's a health coach and he works in a great working relationship with another health practitioner. So he's going to share a little bit about how that happens in their practice and how they help come together to help clients really reach their goals and overcome stumbles or challenges that they've had before. So in the past, he was a basketball coach. So he saw then how old programming and limiting beliefs would cause disruption in people's athletic performances. And from that, then he's gone on to help business entrepreneurs and executives achieve higher levels of success by overcoming that old programming. Now he works with Be Elite and Complete Health Management in a synergistic team to get to the root of health problems for the mind-body connection for their clients. Because if anyone has ever tried to make a change, stick to their diets, or you feel like you're doing the right things and nothing is moving, Brian's going to share with us what potentially might be going on underneath the hood. Hey, Brian.
Hey there. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing this wonderful day?
I'm doing awesome.
Amazing. So I've already read your bio for everyone, and so I would love to have us jump into our conversation today.
Okay.
I'll give you a sec. Is it?
Yeah, I think we're good. Everything coming through all right?
Yeah, I can hear you great. I can see you.
Awesome.
Perfect. So I would love for you to start with, you have an interesting background with first as a basketball coach and then moving into mind-body practitioner. I find that really unique. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to the kind of work that you do right now?
Sure. I actually started out the high school level of coaching basketball, and then I went over and was the head women's basketball coach at the college. And I did that for like 12 years. And that's where I got involved with the subconscious mind part. My cousins were big chiropractors in St. Louis, and I went to an event with them. It's a big chiropractor event. And Dr. Bruce Lipton was speaking at the event. And so my cousin's like, you need to go hear him speak and everything. So I immediately connected with him, got to meet him, all those types of things. But at the end of his speech, he talked about doing Psych K, which is a modality. And so I went and got all the training for that, mainly just for my athletes, because I knew I had really good athletes. I had recruited them and everything, but just things started happening with them. Things, they had issues and problems and little things coming up. So that's when I really got into that. So, and the big thing for me was once I introduced that to them, they were coming to me nonstop, a 20-year-old female with issues. I mean, it was, that's just how it was. And so whether it was on the court, off the court, school, anything they had, we really worked through that. And everything's done with the Psych K through muscle testing. So I was mainly muscle testing them. And so the first 5 years of it, I was doing it every day, pretty much all day, working with the athletes other than the actual basketball practice and things like that. So it really made me better as far as working that. And then I got involved with nutrition, like more in the network marketing area. And that's when it really exploded, because once everybody found out what I worked with and what I had worked on and helped other people with, I had people coming at me, and especially women. That network marketing is just a way bigger women's field. And so there was a time, when I was probably working with 60 to 80 people a week, one-on-one. And by this time I was able to work all remotely, because they were from all over the world, really, but mainly United States. But so I was mainly working remotely with muscle testing and doing all this stuff. And that's when, everything really started taking off. So it was the combination of, they wanted to do nutrition, they wanted their bodies to be better, but they were also trying to run a business. So I helped them with all why they were running the business, all those things. So that really got me moving in with the CEOs and executives. So I went from those athletes to high level people, just wherever they were at, and help them through their health journey also when they were dealing with different things and stuff like that. So that's really, then coming to now, so it's been 20 years every day, all day. I mean, that's mainly what I do. And, since I do probably 99% of my stuff remote, I get text messages and emails and things from clients and stuff that that I help and work with. And that's kind of that's just kind of how everything's worked. So yeah, that's my journey through all that. So it's not just, I had a client come in, once every 4 weeks and I got to work with them. It was all day, every day when it was, I have whiteboards all over my living room. And so I had people's names, 50, 60 of them, 70 of them that I was working with, that, this day I would be balancing working with 10 of them. This day I'd be doing another 10. So it was definitely, it was a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, but it was well worth it now, because now it's just like second nature to pretty much find anything that's going on.
That's fantastic. I can really feel how much you care for the clients that you work with, to help them get to their goals. And Dr. Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief, like when I can't remember exactly when I read it, but it was after I had kids. And that book just that one lit something up for me. I was like, oh, I wish I knew this before I had my kids.
Right.
So that's a good segue into, because one of the first things I wanted to ask was, can you explain a little bit about what subconscious programming is, how it develops?
Well, speaking of kids, that's usually when it starts. Sometimes they can even start before then, and it can be, just mainly, but it has so much to do with your environment and what it comes down to, and how the person is programmed growing up and all that. But a lot of the issues and the deep core issues that I deal with are going back to childhood issues, things that have happened, and they don't even really know it, but that's running the program. So if you think about when you learn how to drive a car, once you learn, you don't have to, sit and go, oh, I need to put it in reverse. I need to look every way, I need to have my hands here. No, you jump in, you take off, you drive. You can drive 20 miles down the road and realize, did I pass my spot? The subconscious is driving and doing everything while you're listening to the radio or whatever you're doing. And so that's really where, when you get into the programming of childhood stuff, if there was even little things that weren't going right and they became the habit and they became what you're dealing with, then this is where this can really affect you when you're later on. And that's what I see a lot of. So we want to talk mostly today about health and weight. So how does some of that programming show up in our daily choices? What I see a lot of, and I've seen a lot of, is shame and guilt and things like that people have dealt with. And so, or being compared to, not good enough, self-esteem issues. And this actually, so the body starts holding on to things for protection. And I saw this with my athletes. If they didn't quite fit in with the rest of the women on the team or, or something, you could see their confidence level start to drop. You could see, so it was all what they were playing in their mind or what they'd been programmed with to, react and say, oh, this isn't right for me. And so you could tell. And then as soon as they got, maybe in with a couple of the other female athletes or something, all of a sudden that started turning around. So I could really tell, like, especially in the nutrition world and everything, people holding on to weight for a long time, or they just keep getting bigger. And yeah, I mean, obviously our food, you can go into all of that and the diets of people and all that. But when you get to the core, it's usually something in the subconscious or a few things in the subconscious that just will not allow you to release because it's there for protection, because it's literally trying to hide your self-esteem or your self-worth or whatever, the comfort. So yeah, that's a lot what I've dealt with for a lot of years in that health industry.
And so how do you, if you can identify some of those things that might be holding someone back, how do you help them move through that or fix that? Or, what are the words you use? Is it installing a new programming? What is it? Yeah.
So, it's definitely putting the program, changing it back into their subconscious mind. But it would be like you're looking at, like if you're looking at self-worth, like I am worthy of the best that love and life has to offer. There's just different statements that I give them. Now I can literally change those in the subconscious so that they have a building block. And that's where, like, when I work with energy and everything and your muscle testing, all that. And so then I give them the statements of like that, like I am worthy, I am the best. So many different, it just depends on what area they're in. And I can identify what is really holding them back. Some things are self-esteem, and then some things can be in relationships, depending on, if you had really bad relationships or you've watched and observed really bad relationships, you can have really blocks in those areas. So those will come out when they're really weak, and that's where I can identify they're weak. So we change over those weak statements into strong statements, but that can happen, fairly quickly. And then, but there's still the time frame. Usually it takes, 20, 30 days, or some people work 8 weeks, 6 months, depending on how much stuff they have. But it's really changing over the thoughts that are going on in their subconscious that has been programmed forever. So just how long it's been sitting there is the difference in, where they're coming from, or how long they've really got to deal with it.
So I have two questions from that. Is one, is it affirmations, or how would you distinguish between those things that you have people say to rewrite that subconscious? Is it affirmations and slightly different? And then is this something someone would be repeating every day? How would they really get that written in?
Yeah, that's true. It's affirmations. And yes, so when I give them the statement, I tell them, 3-4 times, I kind of give them ideas on how to do it. A lot of times, like with your eyes open, repeating it, and with your eyes closed, because the eyes open is talking to the conscious mind and the eyes closed is talking to the subconscious mind, to just, reiterate those statements to make sure they're, but it does have a lot to do with their environment. Their environment is huge because, and I'm sure you might ask me a question about this down later on or whatever, but when you have somebody that goes, oh, okay, yeah, I meditated for, 20 minutes or a half an hour or whatever, but the other 23 hours of their life is in, shambles. It's in disarray. They're dealing with drama. They're talking negative to everybody and everything, so then that's where I find there's way more things going on, because they've had in their environment is really causing a lot of problems. And so it just depends. It depends on how big their problem is, to how quickly it'll go. Most of the time it's just really quick and it'll change, and you can literally see them change pretty quickly. And then other times, the next day or 5 weeks or whatever later, they're like, oh, it was good for a while, but then it wasn't, because they got put back into the environment that they were in. And then those things, they if they're not making it a habit to make that strong, like their self-worth or whatever, and they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see or whatever, those types of things, then they still can have some issues and problems. So the subconscious mind is mainly there to keep you safe. I mean, it literally is. It's, the fight or flight, it's everything. It'll do everything to make sure you're not. So when you got to change some things, that makes up for, how quickly that can move for you when you're ready for growth. So.
And I find maybe, I would imagine you see this too. Sometimes I feel, specifically, I work mostly with women, that shame or self-worth will, if someone has shame or a self-worth issue, that will even prevent them from doing something that I guess even like logically they know they should do. Like, let's say they're not healthy and they need to do some stuff. How do you like that's a tough one, right? Like if you talk to someone and like if you just did this, it would like help so much, but they're stuck self-worth, like they won't invest in themselves. They won't give them the time to themselves to whatever it is that they need to do. How would because there's a lot of, I think mostly watching right now is practitioners, like how is a practitioner, if we're talking to someone, if we're like, okay, they're stuck in shame, they're, everyone here is pretty aware, we can see these self-worth patterns, like how would we even connect with someone to get them to say yes to themselves?
Right. Well, that's where what I do is a little bit different because I can help them get there.
Yeah.
But when you're just talking to them and stuff, a big way that I see is trying to stay present, not falling back into the past or the future, because usually they're comparing themselves to I've never been good enough. I was always told I wasn't good enough. But what are you doing today? Just now, not, and if you can get them to move even a little bit more present, then, and I mean, even anything, whatever they're trying to work on or whatever they're trying to build their business or whatever, you just have today. We're not guaranteed tomorrow, and you can't go back to yesterday. So it's those things have gone. The only problem is that even if you were in a terrible situation, if your mind thinks that's safe because that's all you know, then you have to start looking at being open to other things can be good for you instead of just doing what you know and not, staying in that pattern that keeps going over and over again. And so it's really working more in that subconscious. Then you're looking at some meditation, some different things to where they're actually getting into more positive, maybe that's put in the music or, whatever, something that's away from the drama, the negativity that they can see every day, all day. I've seen it, I've dealt with it. I've worked with over 1,000 people. So I know, and especially women and especially nutrition and weight and all that. There's a lot of things that literally stop them that if they would just kind of let go of something, they're a whole different person. So that's where this is just so unique, being able to, actually just go in and say, well, I changed that for you. So now, and they're like, well, is that why my whole day is different? And, I feel really good. And because there's something in the subconscious got removed. And now, because we're mainly built to heal ourselves. So if you put the mind in the right spot, then they can start healing themselves. And once they start feeling the good, they want to stay more with the good. If they're just stuck in the bad, they don't even know what that feels like. So that's really where you need to move them. And sometimes it's a conscious movement, not just subconscious. So, yeah.
Awesome. I would love for you to share some tools for anyone who's watching. What would be some tools they could do? But specifically, it's a very common one I come across is, again, people will say things and they've identified it as a label. Like, I always self-sabotage. I always overeat, or I never say, they've seen a challenge, right? So for, again, weight loss, that's a very common one.
Right.
Using self-sabotage, once they've affixed that label, what can someone be, if they're watching this, how can they be aware of that? And then maybe you can loop into some tools that would be helpful for them.
Yeah. So self-sabotage, that's a great one there. I see that all the time. a lot of times we have a hard time identifying ourselves, like seeing that we're actually doing that. If you've identified it for yourself, then you're actually probably ahead of a lot of people. It's mainly seeing it in other people, and you see their patterns, and you're like going, well, gosh, if they would quit doing that, they would be pretty good. And then somebody comes along and says that to you, like, well, if you could stop doing that, you would actually be pretty good. And they're like, so if they become aware a little bit more about themselves, then they can start, a lot of times like that, like you said, that meditation, even like yoga, working out, little things like that, where they start feeling better about themselves, starts perpetuating that. And then they can, work on those things. Some of the tools like that I use, you can, go, some of most you gotta get training for and things like that are just like that will help you get to it. But there's also coaches, there's also people that have dealt with a lot of other people that will literally be able to walk you through some things. I just, the people that come to me or that have come to me in the past, they've tried so many different things, and it doesn't work. It'll work for a while, and then they're like, well, I'm back to this. So like you said, overeating or eating at night, and they're sitting there snacking on things that they normally wouldn't do. I would start identifying, like, why did I feel like I had to go do this? It might go all the way back because your parents sat there on the couch and ate and did stuff. It also can be that something just recently triggered you, and it's your comfort. I'm replacing something with something else. And I see this a lot, like they are trying to avoid something, so they pick up eating or whatever, and they're just like, oh, well, yeah, I'm eating more of that now. And I'm doing it. Why am I doing that? And I'm like, well, what are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to not? And it might even be really good in their life, but they don't feel safe there, or they don't feel, because of the programming, they don't feel like they're in a good spot, or their self-esteem won't get better. Once they see it or once they go through it and they start going, oh yeah, I recognize that. And then they can become way more self-aware. And that's a huge thing, instead of always having to depend on somebody else to tell you, but that's usually the hardest thing for people, is to admit that they're doing it. They can see everybody else doing it, but they can't see themselves doing it. Once they do, I see the growth happen a lot faster once they start admitting that, like, okay, I see I'm doing this now. And then they can start working on themselves, or catching them consciously not to do it. And that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
Rewriting the habit.
Yeah, I feel that's even like that awareness, right? If they have that awareness, I like how you explain that, because some of that, we might take for granted that, and we all have things in our life that we're just unconsciously doing. So even if someone realizes in the middle of eating the chips on the couch, like, wait a minute, even if they catch themselves in the act of, right, they caught themselves versus, last month they just did it and weren't even thinking about what they were doing. Right. So I say, again, sometimes it's like, the wins seem like, if we can celebrate the micro wins, that gives us hope, right? Like, we're on the right trajectory. Okay, we have some awareness. I caught it, so I could ask myself the question of what the heck was going on, right, so that maybe you could, okay, what happened before that, or where did this habit or routine really come from? So cool. Yeah.
I usually ask them, did they catch it before they finished the bag of chips, or was it in the middle? Where they could stop a little bit, and then kind of, and then they actually feel better, even though they didn't want to do that. They still feel better that they didn't sit there and eat the whole bag. And so I know, but that's it's a win. Yeah, and that's true.
Do you have any client success stories that pop out that you've really helped use your techniques, that they've had big shifts in their weight and their health?
Yeah, well, especially in the network marketing area, when I was in the nutrition stuff, because we had like the 100-pound club and things like that, where people had a lot more weight to lose, and some of the biggest things that we'd always be working on is that shame, guilt, why they even started to get that, because they weren't born like that. It's just something that had come along, or they had learned or they were programmed for, and they're just like, yeah, I get to this point and I can't stop. So yeah, working with, like I said, that shame and guilt and blame and comparing so big, because even when you're like a teenager, and you're in a group of, let's say, girls, and you're just like, you want to fit in, you want to be in the cool group or whatever, and you find out that you're not, or they made fun of you. The lasting impressions that it has is just so, it's traumatic. And some can just, you know, nah, it's no big deal, and I got my friends over here. Those people are in a little bit better place where, yeah. So I've worked with countless women, well, and guys too, but women of just like, why am I holding on to all of this weight? And when they're in either fight or flight, or, you know, it's for survival mode, that's even a little bit different than some of the shame and blame. But yeah, it still comes down to core reasons why. Because you can sit and watch somebody eat all day and they never gain a pound, and you're like, you know, I watch them eat and I gain 5 pounds. And so, you know, and it's just like, what is going on? But it literally takes you back subconsciously to why you do it. Sometimes you don't even have to be actually physically doing it. You're just observing, and you can feel your body just start to hold on to things, and you just don't feel like you're outgoing as you were. And so, yeah, I've worked with so many people in the weight. I mean, I've got stories I can tell you. It's not always all about weight, but it's just like, you know, they've got injuries or physical things that are happening, and then it's kind of contributing to the weight gain because they don't feel like they're as active or whatever. And once they start but sometimes those things start hurting, not because you physically injured them, but because of other stressors that are going on. And so then you have, you know, then it starts holding on to everything, and it holds on to your weight. And so there's a lot of different things going on when you're looking at that subconscious mind and what's happening.
Yeah, I see that almost being, I'd never thought of it that way. Because what I saw when you were explaining that, almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, like if someone's injured, okay, well, I'm not walking, so I'm going to gain weight. And they're worried about they're going to gain weight. So then what happens is they gain weight.
They gain weight. They've already, and you know, and the other thing is like they've gained, or they've even gained the weight, and they're like, oh, I got to lose weight. I got to lose weight. Well, the subconscious doesn't hear the lose. It just hears weight. So then you find yourself at midnight grabbing a snack. You know, you're just like, why do I keep doing these things? And you literally got to go. It's like I said, a lot of it's back in the childhood trauma things that you're dealing with that have never been resolved. And all of a sudden, and you might lose a bunch of weight and you feel really good, but why does it come back on? Why are you going back to these old habits? And that's where those things are at.
Do you mind? Can I share my example? It's related to this, but because trauma gets so much of the focus, and sometimes, like, I've run a lot of workshops where we try to identify what the root is, and sometimes it's not always like a negative. Like sometimes it's not always a trauma that then develops something. So I'll give you my adult example. Is like I used to eat, like, if there was like a pack of chocolate chip cookies and it was night, I would eat the whole thing, and I'm like, I would take two. It's like after supper you can have 2 cookies. And then, like, but I would know, I'm like, I'm going to end up eating this whole thing tonight, right? And maybe I'd only eat half, whatever. But I would definitely eat more than I would be proud of admitting to eat. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? So this is when I was like deep into the work of David Hawkins. So I was doing like the letting go. So I was like going back through like every example of like when I ate chocolate chip cookies, right? And so you go back and be like, okay, we used to make chocolate chip cookies at home, and my neighbor always made the best chocolate chip cookies. And then I had like a flash, and as soon as you have the flash, like I couldn't deny it. So we used to live next door to my great grandparents, and I had a flash, and I probably would have been 5, going into her house and her pulling fresh baked chocolate chip cookies out of the oven. And what's grandma's fresh baked chocolate chip cookies? They're love.
The best. Yeah.
It's pure love. So when I was an adult and stressed and got home from work and tired of young kids and maybe I had a fight with a husband, what was I looking for? I was looking for love.
Love. Yep.
So
That's true.
sometimes sometimes it's not all trauma. Sometimes it's trying to, of like the smart thing would be to reconnect with love, but it's not in the box of cookies anymore.
Right. And it's, well, it's like feeling safe
Yeah.
or comfort. And so when you're drawn to that, yeah, and that's where they even call it comfort food. And all of a sudden you're just eating it and you don't know why. And so like I can literally I can tell them exactly like when it started. So I can go, well, this was 12 years ago. This was 18 years ago. This was 30 years ago. And then the bell goes off. That flash. They're like, oh, I know exactly what happened. And as soon as they start talking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's why you're having these, you just keep doing this over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big thing when they start uncovering what's happened in the past.
That's
Yeah.
great. So I hope everyone listening is like, it's not your fault, but as an adult, we can figure out what the root is. And then once you've identified the root, even just
Yep.
bringing that awareness to it, a lot of times that will fix it or you can get in the right path. So anyone who's like feeling stuck and they've been doing the things, maybe they've been yo-yoing with their weight, what's the first step into this type of work?
What's the first one? Oh, first stop.
First step, like what's something they could
First
do
step.
to.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, like first, like you said, identifying that you even have the problem instead of like, well, this is just how I am. Some people just get to the point where this is just how I am.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no, if you had to like, I use the athlete, if you had to go be an athlete again, or you were to go even work out or start walking or whatever, would you still be doing this? Talking eating wise or health wise? Well, no, I would never, and so then once they start realizing that, so then you're looking at, I mean, and I go back to some of those meditation things, some of those things where you can calm the mind and not be overthinking, not be thinking too much in the future or oh, this is what it was in the past, and you just keep going because you're just like your example is you do it and you don't even know why you're doing it until you really uncover. But you uncovered it when you became consciously aware of what happened in the past, like that specific thing. And so those are the things of uncovering. And you might want to journal, you might want to write things down so that you know where you were at and you're like, well, no, it's not at that time. It's still deeper because I can tell because that really didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden you start getting into, but it can go back to things that you don't because you were too young. I mean, it could be when you were 1 or 2 years old and you don't even realize, but there's still other things that you can do. And a lot of people, when they go through some of these things, is really getting more present. And depending on how religious or higher power or anything like that, prayer, God, I mean, I've seen a lot of people come out of it when they, just put everything in God's hands and say, quit worrying, quit stressing, quit doing all these things and live your life. And all of a sudden the body and the mind goes, oh, I can release this now. I don't need to hold on to this. And all of a sudden they feel better. Things start getting better. So those are like the quick, first steps to do to try and figure out. It's whatever's best for you, whatever feels more comfortable and best for you to do that. If you're not in, contact with somebody that can really help you or can help you identify some of those things. So
That
yeah.
is so powerful. Yeah, that's so powerful. Great places. So many great ideas and suggestions in our conversation today. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of practitioners who watch these videos online, and maybe they're like a practitioner, a holistic practitioner. How where do you feel your role as a coach, like working with another practitioner, for again, so like see like so many of the practitioners just like, oh man, like I would like to make this type of service available to my clients. Like, how do you work with other health practitioners, and what kind of role do you support the clients in their health journey?
Yeah, and it depends on where the practitioner wants to go with it. I've worked with, countless leaders that are in charge of people or they've got their group and whatever. So I've worked different routes where they send their people to me or I've worked at where I've worked with the leader and or the practitioner, and then I actually can help them identify, like, the 5 biggest things that's happening with this person, the 3 biggest things that's happening, like where they all need to start. It just depends on like how big a thing it is, how many people there are. So yeah, I've had people hire me like, okay, I've got my 10 big movers. They're gonna rock this world. I need them at their best, whether it's weight or money or whatever, it doesn't matter. And so then I go in and say, okay, well, this person has these blocks. This is what's stopping them. And then if they want me to help, then that's different. But if they can at least go and identify to that person, like, this is why you're doing this. This is what's happening. This is why you're not making the money, or this is why you're not losing weight. And they can go back to there and they're like, they've got a starting point. They know what they've got to do. And I've never had anyone come up and go, well, that's not me. I mean, they thought maybe that way, but once they started to see why I came up with these things for them that stuck in their subconscious, they're like, oh, yeah, I know what that goes back to. I know exactly what's happening. But just like your example, you don't realize it if it's a positive thing. Usually you're looking for all negative, and it might just be something that you love doing so much, and now it's just there all the time, and you can't break that. And so there's a lot of different ways that leaders or practitioners have come to me and worked with. I've worked with a lot of people with other different modalities that they just can't come to an answer for somebody. They can't figure out what's going on, and I can get it for them in 5 minutes, and they're like, oh, we've been trying so hard, and they know exactly what it is when I tell them, and they're like, oh, that I would have never found that. Because it's nothing what they thought was causing their problem.
Yeah, that stuff's never going to show up on a lab test.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It might be affecting the blood and everything, and they might see it, but they don't understand what's causing it. Or maybe it was another job that they had, and they didn't realize the stress that they were under at that job. They were looking further back, and it really wasn't that far back. And all of a sudden, I'm like, well, this was like 3 years ago. And they're like, oh, yeah. And I worked with this specific person that drove me crazy. And then all of a sudden, they know exactly. And then they can go and, whatever, meditate on that, do whatever they need. Or like I said, they hire me also to do those things, but otherwise I can get them a starting point to go and say, this is what's happening.
Oh, that's so powerful. Where can people connect with you to find out more about you and your work?
Well, I'm on, the website I'm on is beelitehealth.com. You can get me on Instagram. That's at Rads44. You can send me a message. I'm on LinkedIn at Brian Radtke. Yeah, I'm pretty much, I'm doing videos and stuff. I'm on YouTube. I mean, I would rather probably have it either an Instagram message or a, LinkedIn, the one I'm on the most, just so I catch it and everything. But yeah, I pretty much check through everything. And, it's, you find out when it's like the divine, when you're coming across something, and sometimes it's not right for somebody at the right time and all those things. And then all of a sudden, you've got, just where like, oh, this is exactly what I needed, because I've been dealing with something for 25 years and I can't figure out why I keep doing this or why this keeps going bad. So yeah, it's just, I had that same moment, I just knew it was the right thing at the right time. And that changed my path forever. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I fully
go ahead. Sorry.
I was the same thing. Like I believe in that, like divine timing. That sometimes, sometimes we hear something, or maybe we went to a seminar, maybe we read a book, someone told us about something, and it wasn't until like the 3rd time or the 6th time we're like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to actually go into this now, or book that call, or talk to that person. Yeah,
I when you said that, I refer back to the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I mean, most people are like, that is so far out there. I can't even, I said, well, I've read it like 25 times. And so each time I would go in, I'd be like, oh, I didn't catch that the last day. So you definitely, you just don't even realize where you are until you start, but it hits you. And once it hits you, you're like, now I know. So it's awesome when you do it though, when you find it and you can start getting answers to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And yeah. So when you go to like that Be Elite Health, I'm also in that with Ellie. I think you interviewed her last week.
Yeah, I interviewed her last week. I'd even total coincidence. Well, again, not coincidence, but wasn't
Right.
scheduled. But we talked to Ellie last week.
Yeah.
We're talking to Brian today. So you got the full team at Be Elite Health.
Yeah, and that's where, you put together the nurse practitioner and the subconscious mind, and you can really get to answers of what's happening with some people. And so that's where we're at. So it's awesome. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. And obviously this video will be up on Instagram. So it'll be easy enough for someone watching this just to click on Brian's tag and go over, check what's going over on his page and send him a message if you have any personal questions. Well,
yeah. And I usually do like a free discovery call or whatever. So if it's something you just want to pop on and talk about something because you've got something going on, it's perfect.
awesome.
So yeah, it's awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Brian. I know everyone got some nuggets. And if anyone watching this resonated with you, drop a heart and share this with somebody who maybe needs to hear this message today. So until next time, have a good one.
You too. Thank you. You bet.
Bye.
Bye.